Hello and welcome to All Top 5s. There are countless characters and creatures from Greek mythology and legend, some more well known, others far more obscure. Here are 5 that cover all that ground, featuring the most interesting creatures from the days of ancient mythological Greece. Number 5. Crocotta. First mentioned by ancient Greek philosopher and historian Strabo in his massive accounts of the world at the time, the Crocotta, or Crocotta, was described as a fierce mythological cross between a wolf or a lion and a dog. Although not visually striking, the Crocotta was believed to have some really strange behaviours. Pliny the Elder, the famous ancient naturalist, had plenty to say about the Crocotta. It simulates human speech. To call a shepherd to come out of doors and tear him to pieces. It imitates a person being sick, to attract the dogs so that it may attack them. He goes further to state the Crocotta digs up corpses, its eyes have 1,000 variations of colour, and it has an unbroken ridge of bone in each jaw, forming a continuous tooth without any gum. This beast seems to be blessed with supernatural powers too. Allegedly, any dog who stands in the shadow of a Crocotta will be struck dumb. Pliny finishes that by some magic arts, any animal the Crocotta gazes at 3 times will be frozen to the spot, unable to move. They use a similar magic to swap between genders too. Crocotta are supposed to have been discovered in India and Ethiopia on expeditions, and made quite a stir amongst the ancient Greek and Roman scholars. Now, this Crocotta sounds familiar, and you may have already come to the same conclusion. It's a lot like a hyena. Indeed, hyenas' jaws are extremely powerful. They've been known to dig up human bodies to eat, as they are scavengers, and the noises that they make can sound uncannily like humans crying, laughing, or screaming. So the myth does sound a lot like hyenas at the root, and the ancient Greeks' imaginations built them up to be something more. That logic, however, definitely doesn't apply to our next mythological creature. Number 4. Minotaur. Actually from ancient Greece this time, the Minotaur, sometimes pronounced Minotaur, was made famous by the story of Theseus. Portrayed as a creature with the body of a man and the head of a bull, the Minotaur was born to the Cretan bull, a white bull sent to earth by the god Poseidon, and Pasiphae, the queen of Crete and the daughter of the sun god Helios. It's a strange and not particularly flattering story, the Minotaur's conception, though the ancient poet Virgil dwells on the subject matter rather vividly. Anyhow, as the Minotaur grew up under Pasiphae's motherly nurturing, he needed to devour humans for sustenance, being an unnatural and fierce creature. Minos, the king of Crete at the time, constructed an enormous labyrinth near Knossos in which to imprison the Minotaur for the rest of his hellish life. He was fed 7 young men and 7 young women every 7 years, selected at random by the drawing of lots. This wasn't an ideal system for those who lived there, as you might understand, and the heroic Theseus came onto the scene, offering to slay the beast himself before yet another human sacrifice to the Minotaur was to be made. He promised his father, Aegeus, that if he was successful he'd sail back with white sails, but if he was killed, Theseus's crew would come home with black sails. Theseus tracked the Minotaur in his mighty labyrinth with the help of Ariadne, actually half-sister to the Minotaur. After a trying fight between the pair of them, the Minotaur was overcome and slain, and Theseus victorious. He was so elated that on his journey home, he forgot to hoist the white sail instead of the black, and his father, seeing this, threw himself into the sea, committing suicide. It couldn't all end happily. So there was only one Minotaur, and he met with a grisly end. But that doesn't stop his story from being one of the best-known ancient Greek myths of all time. Number 3. Charybdis. Once upon a time there was a god called Poseidon, the god of the sea. He had many offspring, but with Gaia, personification of the earth, he had 2 children. One of those was a girl called Charybdis. She was a good daughter and helped her father Poseidon in his ongoing feud with Zeus, ruler of the gods, and also uncle to Charybdis. Because this led to Poseidon flooding Zeus's lands with seawater, Zeus was angry at his niece. in an action that screams, "Well then, if you like the sea so much," chaining her to the sea floor. Then Zeus placed a curse on the poor girl, turning her into a bladder of a sea monster, grotesque with her arms and legs turned to flippers. He also made it that she had an uncontrollable thirst for seawater. From then on, she dwelled on a rock, disappearing into the water to drink deeply of it 3 times a day, causing dangerous whirlpools to form. This rock is located in the Strait of Messina and is opposite the rock upon which sits Scylla, a larger and more well-known sea monster of ancient Greek mythology. Between them both and Charybdis' whirlpools, the strait was considered hugely dangerous. Despite Charybdis' small size, she posed a threat multiple times to the hero Odysseus, Jason's Argonauts, and even Aesop reportedly had a story to tell about her. There are indeed whirlpools within the Strait of Messina today, at sizes big enough to swallow ships from ancient Greece. However, the whirlpools aren't strong enough most of the time to even pose a danger to the smallest of boats. Usually. Number 2. Gorgon. Gorgons were female creatures from ancient Greece. Their name comes from the ancient Greek for dreadful, which says all it needs to, really. And they've been in Greek mythology perhaps longer than any other creature. Traditionally, there were 3 Gorgons, all sisters, whose hair was made up of snakes. From there, descriptions vary with history. Some have huge flared nostrils, some have short beards, some have scaly skin, some have tusks, claws, and even wings. And one of the most notable features, of course, is that a Gorgon could turn a person to stone simply by looking them in the eye. In fact, the Gorgons were so feared by the ancient Greeks, their images were used as protection charms on shields and buildings, including temples even. The most famous of the Gorgons has to be Medusa. She and her 2 sisters, Stheno and Euryale, were born to the old deities of the sea. Some painters and sculptors chose to represent Medusa as a beautiful-faced woman, but with those terrifying snakes for hair. At any rate, she was the only one of the 3 Gorgons who was a mortal. There was a hero called Perseus who was sent by King Polydectes to slay Medusa. This was Polydectes' way of getting rid of Perseus, who objected to his mother being forced into marriage with the king. He snuck into the Gorgon's cave with the god's weapons and found Medusa asleep there. So he wouldn't be turned to stone, Perseus attacked Medusa using the reflection on his highly polished shield, and successfully killed her and escaped. In the end, he surprised King Polydectes and showed him Medusa's head, turning him to stone and freeing his mother from the forced marriage. These poor evil creatures of ancient Greek myth don't get treated very well, do they? Number 1. Odontotyrannos. Finally, we come to a mythical beast of epic proportions, the Odontotyrannos. Made famous by its attack on Alexander the Great, the Odontotyrannos is an ancient Greek mythological creature from distant India. Like the Crocotta, this beast was experienced by military expeditions and explorers alike. In a letter from Alexander the Great to Aristotle, the Odontotyrannos was described as having a head like that of a black horse. It was said to have 3 huge horns sticking out of its forehead, and it was larger, he said, than an elephant. 26 of Alexander's men were killed and 52 more injured before the force's spears could finally bring it down. Indeed, it was so huge, says historian Valerius, that it required the strength of 300 men to pull the body of the Odontotyrannos out of the river. When they cut open its innards, they found scorpions in its stomach, as well as an enormous fish as big as an ox. So this amphibious river-dwelling nightmare wasn't something to be laughed at. Of course, no such creature exists today that we know of, but scholars have considered long and hard what the Odontotyrannos of Alexander's day could have been. Some suggested it could be a large species of crocodile, made greater by its links to Hindu mythology in the region. Another theory is that it could be based on the Indus worm, a probably imaginary carnivorous worm with large teeth that lived in the Indus River. Finally, and most likely, one theory is that it was a rhinoceros. Reports back home from expeditions often go over the top, and the description could be less poetic and describe a rhino quite well. I suppose we'll never know, but the Odontotyrannos was a terrifyingly unstoppable beast of ancient Greek mythology. And that's it from All Top 5s for this week. Please remember to be civil when posting your comments. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a like, and you can hit the subscribe button for notifications of all my new videos. You can click to support All Top 5s on Patreon too. So peace and love to each and every one of you, and I'll see you all next time on All Top 5s.